Kids, good evening. I'm going to continue on with one of my life videos. This is another one of the My Life series. Today, the title is going to be Bipolar Or. And I'm going to discuss some of my history with mental illness. Now, I want to give a shout out to a video page on YouTube and also a web page. It's called Bipolar or Waking Up. It's a great thing. It's very releasing, and I'll explain why. When I was 17 years old, I was outed as a homosexual. My parents decided to send me to a mental institution to be fixed back in 1983. What came out of that fixing was a well-adjusted homosexual with a really bad attitude. Essentially. And my psychologist in the hospital said there was nothing wrong with me. But she was also aware that I hated my psychiatrist, and I used to screw with him mercilessly. So she said, don't do that or he's going to medicate you. Don't do that or he's going to medicate you. And sure enough, he decided to diagnose me at the time as manic depressive, and he put me on lithium. Lithium is one hell of a horrible drug. It just ravages the body completely, and it does it very quickly. And it turned me into a zombie. And since I was 17, I had no say in the matter. But the night I turned 18, I flushed that lithium down the toilet, and I never took it again. Now, having graduated from this mental hospital still at 17 and having a certificate of sanity from the state of California, I decided to go on with life without medication. Now, I had some classic symptoms of manic depressiveness, but not severe enough. Particularly, I didn't lash out angrily easily. But I had some of that euphoria and that up and down and stuff like that, and that cycling. So I learned to check myself constantly. And I mean constantly. And I also asked people around me. I was very open about what was going on. And I asked them to check me constantly too and let me know if I was slipping away somehow. So that worked for many years, actually decades. Now, back in 2011, I started a downward spiral, and things have changed. I've obviously gotten older. I had diabetes for a couple of years, high blood pressure, stuff like that. So, I mean, being a genetic cesspool and taking all these other medications, somehow this got into this spiral effect. And by the time I went and sought medical help for it, I was initially diagnosed as morbidly depressed with an anxiety condition and bouts of psychosis. Now, no mention of bipolar disorder. I was put on medication, which I had a very bad reaction to. Some antidepressants I had a very bad reaction to. I ended up putting myself in the mental hospital once in November of 2011 for a medication change because I just couldn't handle what they had put me on. It was making me lose my mind. Now, they continued to change and adjust my medication. But then again, I put myself back in the mental hospital in December of 2011 for more observation because I could not function. Now, part of the reason I could not function and where this bipolar waking up thing comes into play is I had a highly spiritual existence. And I had at a young age, at 9, I had my first visit from the paranormal. My great-grandmother on the night she died, and she gave me the quote, gift, curse, whatever, of being able to see and being a sensitive or intuitive. And I worked on that and have this kind of psychic, I hate to use that word, psychic abilities, or, you know, I'm the unwilling medium many times. So I've had those kind of enlightening adventures through my lifetime. And I was very good at dealing with the normal and the paranormal, but throwing in this medication and all this abnormal, where I suddenly was having hallucinations, vivid hallucinations, auditory and visual, then came down the diagnosis that I was schizophrenic. Okay, so now they also said I might have OCD. I know I have adopted child syndrome. I suffer greatly from, what's that disorder? It's seasonal affective disorder. So here I am, like this ragtag pile of mental illnesses and emotional disorders, etc. And so what do you end up calling all of that? Because it doesn't all happen at once necessarily, but it all does happen. For example, I have not had a paranoid situation for about a year. And suddenly yesterday I had an extreme paranoid psychosis that lasted like most of the day until I took sedatives and went to sleep. It was extreme. And I hadn't had one of those in a while, and I thought that, quote, period had passed. But it hadn't passed. But I was smart enough to know this. As opposed to losing my mind and going crazy, as they say, I've learned different tricks in how to test what's going on with me. For example, I have 3 dogs. So if I'm hearing things, and I go let's say lay down in bed, they go into extra protective mode. They lay down in bed with me, and they go in a hyper protective mode. They always have. They're very protective of me. So if anything makes a noise, they alert and or they start barking. Well, yesterday I was hearing doors knocking, doors opening and closing, banging. I heard the sound of spoons and forks being rattled around right next to my ear, and the kitchen is on the far end of the house, and no one else is home. I heard the garage door opening and closing. You name it. I was hearing it like it was really happening. I even heard my roommate talking to me, who was still at work and would be working for 2 hours more, clear as day. But the dogs napped through all of it, so I know it couldn't have possibly been anything besides severe auditory hallucinations. I didn't have any visual hallucinations to go along with it, which is usually strange because I do. I often see more than I hear, but yesterday was completely different. It was all auditory hallucinations. And the strange thing was I had one physical thing happen, which was I was trying to lay down, closing my eyes, trying to sleep, taking a nap, and suddenly I got smacked in the chest really hard. Something physically smacked me in the chest really hard. And it felt like a human hand. And I immediately, of course, opened my eyes because it literally moved my body, but there was no one there. And the dogs were still sleeping. So usually if a ghost manifests in the room, one of the dogs is, especially I have one dog that's very sensitive to them, as am I. But there was no energy like that. So complete mystery. I guess my point being is this. No matter what kind of condition that you have, there are ways you can control your reaction to them, as opposed to letting them take you for a ride. It's just a matter of getting to know yourself and putting in checks and balances so that you don't do silly things unnecessarily. I can't tell you how many times personally I cringe when I see people let's say, driving a tractor down a street in Texas or whatever, I think was one of these, things. And this guy just acted like a complete asshole and then turned around and said, well, it's not me, I'm bipolar. Well, no, it was you. Because there's a lot of bipolar people out there that don't steal tractors and drive down Main Street tearing it up. I mean, come on. This built-in excuse or I'm a victim thing really offends me. It offends me when people say that all these shooters are mentally ill, when indeed everybody that shoots guns are not mentally ill. And people that kill are not all mentally ill. It's just not correct. So, use the resources available, and there's lots online. There's lots on YouTube, there's lots on websites and everything else. And don't feel like you're crazy. And if you feel like you're having a spiritual experience along with your mental illness, chances are you really are. It's just breaking down that barrier and allowing it to happen. So it can be a really positive, good thing. It doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be scary. And it doesn't have to take you over. That's just my opinion, and I wanted to share it tonight. Have a good one.